Jake Morrison walked into the big crystal room where all the alien leaders met. His hands shook a little, but he tried to look calm. The room was huge, with seats for creatures from 47 different worlds. Some looked like giant bugs, others like walking trees, and a few were just floating balls of light. Jake was Earth's main speaker to these aliens. Next to him stood Captain Lisa Hayes, a soldier who had fought in 3 different wars. On his other side was Dr. Alex Turner, a smart man who studied alien life forms. All 3 humans looked small compared to the giant creatures around them. The aliens were talking in their own languages. It sounded like a mix of clicks, whistles, and sounds that hurt human ears. Jake knew most of them thought humans were too new and too stupid to matter. Earth had only joined this group 3 years ago, making humans the youngest members. Jake stepped up to the speaking platform in the middle of the room. His voice carried to every corner through machines that turned his words into alien languages. "Leaders of the Council," Jake said, trying to sound strong. "We come here today with very important news about the Devourers." Right away, the aliens started making dismissive sounds. A tall crystal creature named Velthara stood up. Her body sparkled as she moved, but her voice was cold when the machines translated it. "Ambassador Morrison, your people are known for seeing enemies everywhere. These Devourers you talk about are just space pirates attacking small colonies." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "With respect, Counselor Velthara, we think this is much more dangerous. The way they attack, how they eat everything living, the way they work together like a hive mind." "Enough," came a booming voice that made the whole room shake. High Counselor Zekmore was huge, like a giant octopus with a brain the size of a car. His species had led the Council for over 2,000 years. "Humans always think everything is a war. You see enemies where others see chances to talk and make peace." Captain Hayes stepped forward. She had been quiet until now, but Jake could see she was getting angry too. "Counselor, I have worked for peace on 3 different worlds for this council. I know what working together can do, but I also know what happens when good people refuse to see a real threat." Hayes activated a small device that showed pictures in the air above them. The alien leaders moved back when they saw what the pictures showed. Dead worlds, their surfaces stripped bare, looking like someone had taken everything living away. The outer colonies of Kepler 442 and Gliese 1697 were not just attacked, Hayes said. They were harvested. No survivors, no talking, no mercy. Everything alive was taken. Dr. Turner stepped up next to the floating pictures. "The evidence shows these creatures share one mind. They are driven by hunger that never stops. They do not talk because they do not need to. They do not make deals because they see other life as nothing but food." A peaceful creature that looked like a giant snail waved her tentacles nervously. Simora was known for always trying to find peaceful solutions. Surely there must be some way to talk to them. "All thinking beings can be reasoned with. That kind of thinking will get us all killed," Hayes said bluntly. "My species learned long ago that some threats cannot be talked to, only stopped." This made several aliens angry. A tall creature with bark-like skin stood up and pointed at the humans. "This is exactly why humans should never have been allowed to join the council. Your species' history is full of blood. You solve every problem by fighting." Jake felt his temper getting hotter, but he forced himself to speak calmly. "We are not asking you to fight just to fight. We are asking you to survive. Humans have experience with threats that want to kill everything because we have faced them before. We know what it takes to stop something that wants to eat everything in its path." High Counselor Zekmore's massive body moved in a way that showed he thought the humans were stupid. "Your experience is killing your own kind in primitive wars over food and land. The galaxy has moved past such barbaric behavior, has it?" Jake asked quietly. "When the hegemony wars ended 300 years ago, it was because the bad guys were defeated by force. When the Silicon Plague tried to destroy all computer minds, it was stopped by coordinated military action. Sometimes, Counselor, peace can only be kept through strength. The situations you describe involved thinking beings who could be scared into stopping," Velthara interrupted. "Not mindless beasts driven by hunger, which makes them even more dangerous," Hayes said. "A thinking enemy might be happy with conquest or tribute. These things will not stop until they have eaten everything." Dr. Turner stepped forward again, his voice carrying the weight of scientific proof. "The analysis is clear. The Devourers represent a threat that could kill all organic life in this galaxy. They make more of themselves very fast, adapt to new places within cycles, and show no signs of territorial limits. If we do not act now while their numbers are still manageable, Manageable. Zekmor's voice boomed with disbelieving laughter. You speak of acts of genocide as if they were pest control. Because that is exactly what this is, Jake said, his diplomatic mask finally slipping. Sometimes survival requires hard choices. Sometimes being civilized means doing uncivilized things to protect civilization itself. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates called for humanity's immediate removal from the council. Others demanded formal punishment against the human military. Through it all, Jake, Hayes, and Turner stood firm at the speaking platform, watching their warnings fall on deaf ears. When the chaos finally died down, High Counselor Zekmor spoke with finality. The Council has heard humanity's concerns and finds them to be based on prejudice and fear rather than reason. No military action will be authorized. Instead, we will send diplomatic envoys to establish contact with these devourers and seek a peaceful solution. Jake looked around the chamber at the faces of beings he had hoped to call allies. You are making a mistake. When they come, and they will come, do not expect humanity to clean up the mess alone. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Velthara asked coldly. It is a promise, Jake replied. Humanity has survived by being willing to do what others will not. We have tried to share that strength with the galaxy, but if you will not accept our help, we will do what we have always done. We will survive, no matter the cost. As the human delegation left the chamber, Captain Hayes leaned close to Jake. Think they will listen when the Devourers reach the main worlds? No, Jake said grimly. They will expect us to save them anyway. Behind them, the Council continued their debates, secure in their belief that civilization and reason could overcome any threat. They had no idea that in the darkness between stars, something ancient and hungry was already watching, waiting, and getting closer with each passing day. The three humans walked through the long hallways of the Council building. Other aliens moved out of their way, some looking curious, others looking disgusted. Jake knew that word of their warning would spread quickly through the galaxy. Some would call humans warmongers. Others might quietly start preparing their defenses. But Jake Morrison knew something that the Council did not want to accept. In the cold mathematics of survival, being right mattered more than being popular. And when the Devourers came, the galaxy would learn what humans meant when they said some threats could only be stopped by force. The warning had been given. Now all they could do was wait and prepare for the storm that was coming. 6 months after the humans gave their warning, a council ship called the Harmony flew through space toward the Kepler 442 system. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from her human ship, the Vigilant, as the pretty alien vessel got closer to something that made her stomach turn. Where the colony of New Geneva used to be, there was now a giant thing that pulsed with sick light. It looked alive, like a huge heart beating in space. Tentacles reached from it down to the planet below, sucking up everything that had once been a home to 2 million people. They are actually going to try to talk to that thing, said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell, shaking his head. He was Rodriguez's weapons officer, and his finger stayed close to the firing button even though they were only supposed to watch. Orders are to watch and record only, Rodriguez reminded her crew, though she wanted to help too. 3 human ships waited at the edge of the system, pretending to be there for science but really gathering information about an enemy the galaxy refused to believe in. On the main screen, they watched the Harmony extend its communication equipment and start broadcasting the standard council greeting in 47 different languages and math concepts. What happened next was immediate and terrible. The alien construct erupted like an angry beehive. Thousands of sleek, scary shapes launched from its surface like a swarm of mechanical bugs. Each one was about the size of a human fighter ship, but they looked more like deep-sea monsters than spacecraft. Harmony is sending emergency signals, reported Chief Communications Officer Janet Park. They are asking for immediate help. Rodriguez clenched her jaw. Any council ships responding? No. The nearest council fleet is 4 systems away. They are telling the Harmony to keep trying to talk and avoid making the aliens angry. On the screen, the diplomatic ship was completely surrounded. The Devourers were not firing yet, but their intention was clear. Rodriguez could see smaller forms attaching themselves to the Harmony's hull like parasites. Captain, Bell said quietly, we could be there in 20 minutes. And start an interstellar war, Rodriguez replied, though every instinct screamed at her to act. The council made it clear that human intervention would be considered an act of aggression. The crew watched in horrified silence as the devourers began their work. The smaller organisms secreted some kind of acid that ate through the Harmony's metal hull in minutes. Through the holes, larger forms swarmed inside. They are not killing the crew immediately, Dr. Patricia Stone, the ship's alien expert, observed with cold scientific interest. They are harvesting them, taking them alive back to the construct. For what purpose? Rodriguez asked, though she suspected she did not want to know the answer. Analysis of our biology, most likely. They are not just mindless predators. They are gathering intelligence. The final message from the Harmony was a garbled transmission in the alien captain's language, but the universal translator provided a chilling translation. They are learning. They are copying. They know us now. Then silence. Rodriguez stared at the screen as the devourer swarm returned to their construct, dragging the stripped hull of the Harmony with them. Within hours, the diplomatic vessel had been completely consumed, its materials apparently integrated into the construct's growing mass. Send a priority transmission to Fleet Command, Rodriguez ordered. Full tactical analysis and sensor records, and make sure they understand that the devourers now have detailed information about Council ship designs, diplomatic protocols, and defensive capabilities. Captain, Park said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. I am receiving a transmission from the construct. It is broadcasting using the Harmony's communication array. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was unmistakably that of Captain Vel Nara, the Harmony's commanding officer, but something was wrong with the way it spoke. It sounded like someone learning to talk by copying recordings. Greetings, Council vessels. This unit has completed analysis of your diplomatic offerings. Your attempts at communication have been instructive. We understand your nature now. You are prey that believes itself predator. You are food that thinks itself farmer. Rodriguez felt ice in her veins. They are using the crew. The designation devourer is incomplete. We are the convergence. We consume not merely flesh but knowledge, experience, purpose. The beings you call your diplomats now serve a higher function. Through them, we understand your weaknesses. The transmission continued with horrifying clinical precision. Your council species value individual life over collective survival. You hesitate when action is required. You seek compromise when only dominance will suffice. These are fatal flaws in your design. But we have also learned of a species that does not share these weaknesses. Humans. Your records speak of a race that understands necessity, that chooses survival over comfort, that hunts when others would flee. Rodriguez found herself holding her breath. Tell your human observers this. We have tasted the knowledge of 47 species. They were all prey. But you might prove interesting. When we come for your worlds, do not disappoint us with surrender. Show us if your reputation for tenacity is earned or merely boastful. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Ma'am, Bell said quietly, long-range sensors are detecting movement from the construct. It is spawning. Hundreds of new ships, all based on modified council designs. Rodriguez activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are leaving the system immediately. Prepare for maximum speed to Sol. We have a warning to deliver, and this time, maybe someone will listen. As the Vigilant jumped to hyperspace, its crew carried with them the recorded proof of what humanity had tried to tell the galaxy. The Devourers, the Convergence, were not just a threat to be negotiated with or reasoned away. They were a force of nature, as unstoppable as a hurricane and as deadly as a plague. And now they knew that humans were different. 3 days later, Admiral Susan Carter stood before the emergency session of Earth's Defense Council. Her weathered face was grim as she delivered the news that would change everything. Ladies and gentlemen, the galaxy is about to learn why humans have survived every extinction event our planet has thrown at us. The Convergence thinks we might be interesting prey. They are about to discover that humanity does not know how to be prey. She paused, looking at each face around the table. We know how to be predators, and when something threatens our pack, we hunt it until it is dead or we are. There is no middle ground, no negotiation, no mercy. Admiral Carter activated a holographic display showing Earth's defensive fleets mobilizing across the solar system. The Council wanted to handle this diplomatically. They have just learned what happens to diplomats who negotiate with an existential threat. Now it is our turn to show them what humans do when civilization itself is at stake. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was preparing for war, and this time, they would fight not just for themselves, but for every species too civilized to save itself. Rodriguez's report had made one thing crystal clear. The convergence learned from every victory, adapted from every encounter, and grew stronger with every species they consumed. The diplomatic approach had not just failed, it had made the enemy smarter and more dangerous. But there was one thing the convergence had not yet learned about humans. They were about to discover that some species do not just fight to win territory or resources. Some species fight for the right of all life to exist. And when that right is threatened, humans do not just hunt until the job is done. They hunt until there is nothing left to hunt. 3 months after the Harmony was destroyed, Admiral Ben Cooper stood on the bridge of the human warship Retribution. His task force had just arrived at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, and what they saw would have broken the spirit of most civilized species. New Geneva was gone. The colony that had once been home to 2 million beings from a dozen different species was now a sprawling organic nightmare. The thing that had grown in its place pulsed with alien life, connected to the planet by massive tentacles that had drained the world of everything living. Sensor analysis complete. "Admiral," reported Commander Tony Martinez, "the construct has tripled in size since our last look. Estimated convergence population, 800,000 individual units. Any survivors from the colony?" Cooper asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir, but we are detecting human genetic markers within the construct's biosignatures. They are not just eating the colonists, they are incorporating them." Cooper's face hardened. The colonists had not just died. They had been turned into raw material for the enemy's expansion. It was a fate worse than death, and one that every human military commander had sworn to prevent. "Signal the fleet," Cooper ordered. "All ships, Battle Protocol 7. We are not here to study these things or capture them for research. We are here to burn them out completely." Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communications console. "Admiral, Council Command is transmitting standard rules of engagement. We are ordered to attempt contact and minimize damage to potentially salvageable infrastructure." Cooper laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Council Command can go to hell. They had their chance to handle this diplomatically. Now we do it the human way." The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have been familiar to military historians from Earth's ancient past. It was a hunting pack formation, designed not for conquest but for extermination. Each ship had been fitted with weapons that the Council had banned as excessively destructive. Plasma torpedoes that burned at stellar temperatures, gravity mines that could crack a planet's crust, and most importantly, new bioweapons that Earth scientists had developed specifically to counter the convergence. "All ships report ready." "Admiral?" Martinez confirmed. "Then let's show them what apex predators look like. Fire at will." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The convergence swarmed out of their construct in waves, their bioships moving with inhuman coordination and speed. Against a traditional fleet, their numbers and adaptability would have been overwhelming. But humans had learned warfare in the harshest school imaginable, their own planet. They knew how to fight outnumbered. They knew how to turn the enemy's strengths into weaknesses. "Wolfpack Alpha, this is Cooper," the Admiral broadcast on the tactical channel. "Remember, these things learn and adapt. Do not give them time to analyze your attack patterns. Hit hard, move fast, and when they start to counter, change tactics completely." The human ships danced through the convergent swarm like wolves harrying a herd of deer. When the bioships adapted to their plasma weapons, the humans switched to kinetic bombardment. When the convergence began to predict their movement patterns, Captain Rachel Stone's destroyer squadron performed a maneuver that no sane pilot would attempt, diving directly through the enemy formation while spinning and firing in all directions. "This is Stone," her voice crackled over the comm. "The bastards are trying to latch onto our hulls. Activating Hull Protocol Beta." Hull Protocol Beta was a human innovation that other species found barbaric. Every human warship was equipped with explosive charges on their outer hull. When convergence parasites attempted to bore through, the charges would detonate, taking out sections of the ship's own armor, but killing the attackers before they could breach the interior. "Acceptable losses, Captain," Cooper confirmed. "Keep moving." The tide of battle turned when the bioweapons were deployed. Dr. Kevin Wright had spent 6 months developing a virus specifically designed to target convergence biology. It did not kill them. That would have been too merciful. Instead, it disrupted their hive-mind connection, turning the coordinated swarm into a confused mob of individual predators. Bioweapon deployment successful, reported the Nemesis. Convergence formation is breaking apart. They are attacking each other. Cooper smiled grimly. Phase 2, all ships. Now we finish them. What followed was not a battle. It was an extermination. The human fleet methodically hunted down every convergence unit, showing no mercy and taking no prisoners. When the bioships attempted to flee, human pursuit craft followed them into hyperspace. When they tried to hide in asteroid fields, human sensors found them anyway. The construct itself was the final target. Too large to destroy with conventional weapons, the humans used a tactic that horrified the Council observers monitoring the battle from a safe distance. All ships, prepare for ramming sequence, Cooper ordered. We are going to crack this thing open like an egg. 3 human destroyers, their crews already moved to other ships, accelerated to maximum velocity, and struck the construct at different points simultaneously. The massive structure convulsed and began to tear apart, spilling its contents into the vacuum of space. But Cooper was not finished. As the construct died, millions of individual convergence organisms were released into space. Most species would have considered them defeated, scattered, and no longer a threat. Humans knew better. Pursuit squadrons, this is your admiral. Cooper broadcast. Every single one of these things is a potential seed for a new infestation. Hunt them down. All of them. Do not let a single organism escape this system. The hunt took 18 hours. Human ships pursued fleeing convergence organisms to the edge of the system and beyond. They tracked biosignatures through asteroid belts and gas giant atmospheres. They followed escape pods to nearby systems and eliminated them before they could establish new nests. When it was over, the Tau Ceti system was completely sterilized of convergence presence. Not a single organism survived. The cost had been severe. 12 human ships destroyed, over 3,000 crew members dead or wounded. But the message was clear. This is Admiral Cooper to all Council monitoring stations, he transmitted on all frequencies. Let the record show that the first convergence construct to threaten civilized space has been eliminated completely. Every organism destroyed, every trace of their presence burned away. He paused, looking at the debris field where New Geneva had once thrived. The Council wanted to negotiate with the convergence to find a peaceful solution. The humans tried to warn you that some threats cannot be reasoned with. Now you have seen what we do to existential threats that will not listen to reason. The transmission went silent for a moment before Cooper continued, his voice carrying across the galaxy to every Council world. This is what human mercy looks like. We gave them the chance to turn away, to find other hunting grounds, to leave our space alone. They chose to consume our people instead, so now we hunt them. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, heading for the next reported convergence sighting, Cooper delivered one final message to any convergence organisms monitoring this transmission. You wanted to see if humans live up to our reputation for tenacity. You wanted to know if we truly understand necessity. Consider this your answer. We do not just hunt until the job is done. We hunt until there is nothing left to hunt. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a system scoured clean of life, both human and alien. But in that destruction, a message had been sent that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to defend itself. The hunt had begun, and it would not end until every last convergence organism was extinct. Back on Earth, news of the Tau Ceti victory spread quickly through human space. But Admiral Susan Carter, reviewing the battle reports in her office, knew that this was just the beginning. Intelligence indicated that there were dozens of other convergence constructs scattered throughout the galaxy, each one growing stronger with every passing day. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's warning. Now they would learn what it meant when humans said they would hunt forever. The news of the Tau Ceti extermination spread through Council space like wildfire. Emergency sessions were called, formal protests were filed, and 6 species threatened to throw humanity out of the Council entirely. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood once again before the assembled representatives, but this time the atmosphere was different. Where before there had been dismissive contempt, now there was fear. The pristine council chambers felt somehow smaller, less secure than they had 6 months ago. Ambassador Morrison, High Counselor Zekmore's voice boomed across the chamber. Humanity's actions at Tau Ceti represent the most flagrant violation of Council military doctrine in recorded history. You have committed genocide on a scale that— Genocide? Jake interrupted, his diplomatic restraint finally gone. Counselor, genocide is the systematic destruction of a people or culture. What we did at Tau Ceti was pest control. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Jake pressed on, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Convergence is not a people. They do not have a culture. They do not create, they do not build, they do not preserve. They consume. They are a force of nature, like a plague or a wildfire, and you treat them accordingly. Belthara rose from her crystalline seat, her form practically vibrating with outrage. You speak of sentient beings as if they were animals, because that is exactly what they are, Jake replied coldly. Highly evolved, incredibly dangerous animals. And when a pack of wolves threatens your village, you do not negotiate with them. You kill them before they kill you. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped forward, her military bearing now more pronounced than her diplomatic training. Counselors, while you have been debating the ethics of defending yourselves, the Convergence has been growing. Our intelligence indicates that they have established at least 6 new constructs in the Outer Rim. Each one contains millions of organisms. She activated a holographic display showing the expanding sphere of Convergence influence. Several council members recoiled at the sight. In the time since our warning was dismissed, they have consumed 47 colonies and converted an estimated 20 million beings into biomass. But you are more concerned with humanity's violation of your rules of engagement than with the extinction of entire worlds. Dr. Alex Turner added his scientific perspective. The bioanalysis from Tau Ceti confirmed our worst fears. The Convergence does not just consume organic matter. They integrate it. Every being they capture becomes part of their collective intelligence. They are not just growing in numbers. They are growing in knowledge and capability, which is exactly why we need to destroy them completely, quickly before they become too large to stop, Jake said. Every day we delay, every construct we allow to mature makes the final reckoning worse. The Altarian delegate Sim-Ora fluttered her sensory tendrils nervously. But surely there must be alternatives to total extermination. Perhaps we could contain them, establish boundaries. Hayes laughed bitterly. Counselor, with respect, you do not contain cancer. You cut it out. The Convergence spreads exponentially. There are no boundaries they will not cross, no limits to their expansion. They will consume everything until there is nothing left but them. High Counselor Zekmore shifted his massive bulk, his voice heavy with condescension. And you believe humanity alone can accomplish what the combined might of the Council cannot? No, Jake said quietly. We believe humanity alone is willing to do what needs to be done. The chamber fell silent at the implication. Jake looked around at the faces of beings who had lived in peace for so long, they had forgotten what war truly meant. The Council has thousands of ships, millions of trained personnel, resources that dwarf what humanity can bring to bear. But you are hamstrung by your own civilization. You have rules about acceptable casualties, protocols for prisoner treatment, ethical guidelines for weapon deployment. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Convergence does not have rules. They do not take prisoners. They do not distinguish between military and civilian targets. They are completely, utterly committed to their goal of consuming everything that lives. To defeat them, you need to be equally committed to stopping them. You are describing total war, the Centaurian representative said with obvious horror. Exactly, Jake replied, because that is what this is. The Convergence declared total war on all organic life the moment they began consuming entire worlds. The only question is whether you will fight that war or become their victims. Commander Hayes stepped forward again. The human fleet is already moving toward the next Convergence construct. We will continue hunting them with or without Council support, but we cannot be everywhere at once. Every system we cannot reach in time becomes another source of enemy growth. And every colony that falls, Turner added, gives them more knowledge about our defenses, our technology, our weaknesses. The diplomat crews they consumed gave them detailed information about Council ship designs. How long before they start using that knowledge against you? As if summoned by his words, an aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to High Counselor Zekmore. The massive being's color shifted to what humans had learned indicated shock and fear. "Counselors," Zekmore announced, "I have received confirmation that the Kepler 186 system has gone silent." The last transmission indicated an approaching fleet of ships that match no known design, but contain elements of both Convergence biotechnology and Council defensive systems. The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Convergence had begun adapting Council technology for their own use. Jake nodded grimly. "And that is why we cannot take prisoners. Every ship they capture, every crew they consume, makes them stronger and smarter. This is an enemy that learns from every victory. What would you have us do?" Felthara asked, her crystalline form flickering with what humans recognized as desperation. "Fight," Hayes said simply. "Really fight. Stop worrying about collateral damage and start worrying about survival. Stop trying to minimize casualties and start trying to maximize enemy deaths. Stop thinking like civilized beings and start thinking like predators. Because that is what this is," Jake concluded. "A contest between predators. And the galaxy is about to learn that humans became the apex predator on our planet. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. We became apex predators because when something threatened our survival, we hunted it until it was extinct." High Counselor Zekmore was quiet for a long moment, his massive form motionless. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its condescending tone. If the Council were to authorize joint military operations with human forces, what would you require?" Jake looked at Hayes and Turner, then back at the assembled Council. "Complete operational control of combined fleet actions. No restrictions on weapon types or tactical approaches. No requirements to preserve enemy specimens or attempt communication. And when we identify a convergence construct or fleet, we hit it with everything we have. That would mean placing Council ships under human command." The Centaurian delegate protested. "Yes," Jake said bluntly, "because when your house is burning down, you do not argue with the fire department about proper procedure. You get out of their way and let them do their job." The chamber buzzed with urgent conversations in dozens of languages. Finally, Zekmore called for order. "The Council will consider a joint military operation under the circumstances you have described. But understand, Ambassador, that this represents an unprecedented sharing of authority." "Counselor," Jake replied, "what we are facing is an unprecedented threat. If you want unprecedented results, you need to be willing to take unprecedented actions." As the human delegation left the chamber, they could hear the debates beginning in earnest. For the first time since the crisis began, the Council was seriously considering that their civilized approach might not be enough. But Jake Morrison knew that even if they agreed to fight, it might already be too late. The convergence had been growing while the Council debated, and every day of delay meant more colonies consumed, more knowledge absorbed, more enemies to hunt. Outside the Council chambers, Jake stopped and looked up at the artificial sky that covered the station. Somewhere out there, human fleets were already hunting the next convergence construct. They were buying time with their lives, holding the line while the galaxy slowly came to terms with reality. The galaxy was finally ready to learn what humans meant by total war. Jake only hoped there would still be a galaxy left to save when the learning was done. 2 weeks after the Council voted to authorize joint military operations, Admiral Susan Carter stood in the command center of the newly established Allied Fleet headquarters. Around her, beings from 47 different worlds worked side by side, their species' ancient differences set aside in the face of extinction. The transformation had been remarkable. Zephyrian crystal ships, once designed for peaceful exploration, were being retrofitted with weapons that could turn their entire hulls into focusing lenses for devastating energy beams. Altarian bioships, normally used for ecological research, were being equipped with engineered pathogens designed to disrupt convergence hive mind communications. But it was the human contingent that drew the most attention. Earth's military had grown from a small defensive force to the backbone of the galaxy's survival. Human officers now commanded mixed species fleets, and human tactical doctrine was being taught to alien crews who had never fired a shot in anger. "Admiral," Commander Ryan Bell approached with a data pad in his hands. "Latest intelligence reports from our scouts. The convergence has established a massive construct in the Vega system. Estimated population, over 10 million organisms. Carter looked at the holographic display showing the enemy's growing presence. Red dots marked confirmed convergence constructs, while yellow indicated suspected locations. The pattern was clear. They were moving toward the galactic core, toward the most populated systems. And our fleet status? Carter asked. Human forces number 437 vessels. Council forces add another 800. Combined personnel 2.4 million. Carter nodded. The numbers sounded impressive, but she knew the reality was different. Most of the Council ships had never seen real combat, and their crews were struggling to adapt to the brutal realities of total war. Admiral Carter, came a voice from behind her. She turned to see High Counselor Zek Moore, his massive form moving with obvious difficulty through the human-sized corridors. I wanted to personally thank you for accepting command of the joint forces. Counselor, Carter replied evenly, we are not doing this for thanks. We are doing it because it needs to be done. Nevertheless, Zek Moore continued, I want you to know that the Council recognizes the difficulty of the position we have placed you in. You must command forces that have vastly different philosophies about warfare. Carter looked around the command center, where human officers were working alongside alien crews to plan the next assault. The philosophy differences are the least of our problems, Counselor. The real issue is getting your people to understand that in this war, there are no non-combatants. She activated a display showing recent battle reports. The Centaurian Third Fleet engaged a convergent scout group yesterday. When the enemy ships began to retreat, the Centaurian commander let them go because, and I quote, it would not be sporting to attack a fleeing enemy. Zek Moore's form shifted with what humans had learned to recognize as embarrassment. And the result? Those fleeing ships led the entire convergence fleet back to the Centaurian position. We lost 17 ships and 4,000 crew members because someone thought war should be sporting. Carter pulled up another report. The Altarian bioships have been trying to capture live convergence specimens for study. They have lost 3 vessels because they were more concerned with preserving the enemy than destroying them. What would you have us do? Zek Moore asked. Learn, Carter said simply. Learn that in an existential war, mercy is a luxury you cannot afford. Learn that the enemy you spare today will kill your people tomorrow. Learn that sometimes survival requires doing things that go against everything you believe about civilization. She gestured to a group of human Marines training with alien security forces. My people have been teaching your crews basic combat tactics. But tactics are not enough. They need to understand the mindset. What mindset is that? Carter turned to face the massive alien directly. When you go into battle against the convergence, you are not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. You are fighting for the right of organic life to exist in this universe. There can be no compromise, no negotiation, no mercy. It is extinction or victory. Nothing else matters. An alarm sounded throughout the command center. Communications Officer Janet Park looked up from her console, her face pale. Admiral, we are receiving a distress call from the Arcturus system. They report massive convergence presence and are requesting immediate assistance. Carter looked at the tactical display. Arcturus was a major population center, home to over 50 million beings from a dozen different species. If it fell, the convergence would have enough biomass to create a construct larger than anything they had faced before. How long to reach Arcturus with our full force? Carter asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, Bell replied. And how long before the convergence completes their harvest? Bell consulted his instruments. Based on previous consumption rates, 8 hours. The math was simple and horrible. They could not save Arcturus, but they could prevent the convergence from using it as a stepping stone to the core worlds. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Carter. She broadcast on the command frequency. We are moving to intercept the convergence force at Arcturus. This will not be a rescue mission. This will be a prevention mission. She paused, knowing that her next words would horrify half the species under her command. By the time we arrive, Arcturus will be gone. Our job is to make sure the convergence does not get to keep what they have taken. We will destroy the construct before it can mature, even if that means sacrificing any remaining survivors. The communication channel buzzed with shocked protests from several council commanders. Carter cut them off with cold authority. Any commander who cannot accept these parameters is free to withdraw from the joint fleet. But understand this, every moment of hesitation, Every attempt to minimize casualties, every effort to preserve what cannot be saved, makes the convergence stronger and ensures that more worlds will suffer the same fate. One by one, the protests died away. The brutal logic of total war was finally sinking in. "Admiral," Zekmore said quietly, "you are asking us to become something we have never been." "No, Counselor," Carter replied. "I am asking you to become what you need to be to survive. Humans did not choose to be apex predators. Evolution and necessity made us that way. Now necessity is making the same demand of you." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships prepare for immediate departure. Target Arcturus system. Mission, complete elimination of convergence presence. Rules of engagement. There are no rules. This is total war, and in total war, you fight to win or you die trying." As the massive combined fleet began moving toward the Arcturus system, Carter allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The galaxy was finally learning what humans had tried to teach them from the beginning. Some threats could not be reasoned with. Some enemies could not be deterred. And when faced with absolute evil, the only moral response was absolute force. The alliance had been forged in the fires of necessity, and now it was time to test whether the galaxy's civilized species could transform themselves into the predators they needed to be. In the depths of space, the convergence construct at Arcturus pulsed with malevolent life, feeding on the remains of 50 million souls. But heading toward it at maximum speed was something the convergence had never faced before, an entire galaxy that had finally learned to hunt. The real war was about to begin. The Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system, and the sight that greeted them was worse than anyone had imagined. Where the beautiful blue-green world of Arcturus Prime had once orbited, there was now a massive organic construct the size of a small moon. Admiral Susan Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Defiance, watching as her sensor officers tried to make sense of the readings. The numbers were staggering and horrifying. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez, "the construct has consumed the entire planetary mass. Estimated convergence population, 58 million organisms. It is the largest concentration we have ever encountered." Captain Elena Rodriguez, now serving as Carter's fleet coordinator, looked up from her tactical display. "Ma'am, we are detecting over 3,000 bioships in defensive positions around the construct. They are using formation patterns that match both Zephyrian and Altarian tactical doctrine. They learned from the ships they captured," Carter said grimly. "They are using our own tactics against us." High Counselor Zekmore's image appeared on the command display, transmitted from his vessel at the rear of the formation. His massive form was clearly agitated. "Admiral Carter, the scope of this construct far exceeds our previous intelligence. Perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal and return with additional forces." "No," Carter replied firmly. "Every day we delay gives them more time to grow and adapt. If we let this construct mature, it will spawn dozens of smaller ones. We end this here now today." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. What you are seeing before you represents the consumed remains of 50 million innocent beings. They died because the galaxy was not ready to face the truth about the convergence. We are here to make sure their deaths were not in vain." Carter paused, looking at the tactical display showing over 1,200 Allied ships spreading out in attack formation. "Today, we teach the convergence that there is a species in this galaxy that does not know how to be prey. Today, we show them what happens when predators hunt predators." The battle began with a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Zephyrian crystal ships opened fire with focused energy beams that could slice through bioarmor like it was paper. Altarian vessels deployed clouds of engineered viruses designed to disrupt convergence neural networks. Human ships led the charge with plasma torpedoes and gravitational mines. The convergence response was immediate and overwhelming. Bioships swarmed out of the construct in numbers that defied counting, their movements showing a coordination that no individual intelligence could achieve. They attacked in waves, each one adapting to the tactics used against the previous wave. "First wave incoming," reported Commander Ryan Bell from his position at the tactical station. "Estimated count 8,000 individual bioships. All ships implement Protocol 7, Carter ordered. Adaptive countermeasures every 30 seconds. Do not let them predict our attack patterns. The space around Arcturus erupted in a chaos of energy beams, bioplasma, and explosive decompression. Allied ships danced through the enemy swarm, their crews putting months of cross-species training to the test. Captain Rachel Stone's destroyer squadron performed a maneuver that would have been impossible without human tactical doctrine and alien technology. Her ships dove directly into the heart of the enemy formation, while Zephyrian crystal arrays provided covering fire from multiple angles simultaneously. "This is Stone." Her voice crackled over the comm. "The bioships are trying to latch onto our hulls again. Activating hull protocol beta." Explosive charges detonated across the hulls of her ships, tearing away sections of armor but eliminating the convergence parasites before they could bore through to the interior. It was a brutal tactic that horrified the Council species, but it worked. "Stone's squadron is clear," reported Communications Officer Janet Park, "but we are losing ships on the outer perimeter. The Centaurian Third Fleet is taking heavy casualties." Carter pulled up the tactical display for the Centaurian formation. Their ships were fighting bravely, but they were still trying to preserve their vessels and minimize crew losses. In a battle against an enemy that showed no such restraint, such caution was suicidal. "Get me Captain Velcorin of the Centaurian flagship," Carter ordered. The alien commander's image appeared on screen. His bark-like features streaked with what humans had learned was the Centaurian equivalent of blood. "Admiral Carter, we are taking heavy losses. My ships are not designed for this kind of fighting." "Captain, your ships are fine. It is your tactics that are killing you. You are trying to fight a civilized war against an uncivilized enemy." "What would you have me do?" Velcorin asked desperately. "Fight like a human," Carter replied. "Stop trying to preserve your ships and start trying to kill the enemy. When they swarm you, ram them. When they latch onto your hull, blow up your own armor. When you run out of ammunition, use your ship as a weapon." Velcorin's features showed shock at the suggestion, but desperation won out over civilization. "Understood, Admiral." Carter watched as the Centaurian formation changed from a defensive posture to an aggressive assault pattern. Their losses actually increased in the short term, but their kill rate went up dramatically. The tide of battle began to turn when Dr. Patricia Stone's bioweapon finally took effect. The virus she had developed specifically for this engagement did not just disrupt the convergence hive mind. It turned the bioships against each other. "Bioweapon deployment successful," reported the research vessel Discovery. "Convergence coordination is breaking down. They are beginning to attack their own forces." Carter smiled grimly. "All ships, Phase 2. Now we finish them." The Allied fleet pressed their advantage, hunting down individual bioships that had been separated from the hive mind. But even as they destroyed the defenders, more ships continued to emerge from the massive construct. "Admiral," Martinez reported, "we are detecting some kind of massive energy buildup within the construct. It appears to be preparing to launch." Carter felt ice in her veins. "Launch? You mean it can move?" "Affirmative. The entire structure appears to be some kind of massive spacecraft. If it reaches hyperspace, it could appear anywhere in the galaxy." The implications were staggering. A mobile construct with 50 million convergence organisms could appear at any inhabited world and consume it before defenses could be organized. "All ships, new priority target," Carter broadcast. "The construct itself. We need to cripple its propulsion before it can escape." What followed was the most desperate assault in galactic history. Allied ships threw themselves at the massive biostructure, their crews knowing that failure meant the end of organic civilization. Human vessels led the charge, their captains implementing tactics that would have been considered insane under any other circumstances. The destroyer Nemesis rammed directly into what appeared to be a propulsion node, its crew escaping in armored pods while their ship's reactor went critical inside the enemy structure. Zephyrian crystal ships focused their energy beams on what sensors indicated were critical systems, slicing through bioarmor that was kilometers thick. Altarian bioships released their entire payload of engineered pathogens directly into the construct's interior. The massive structure convulsed and began to tear itself apart as the various attacks took effect. But even as it died, it continued to spawn new bioships as if the convergence was trying to preserve as many organisms as possible. "All ships, pursuit formation," Carter ordered. "Every organism that escapes this system becomes the seed for a new infestation. Hunt them down, all of them." The hunt took 12 hours. Allied ships pursued fleeing convergence organisms through asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and into nearby star systems. They tracked biosignatures with the relentless precision that humans had taught them. When it was finally over, the Arcturus system was completely sterilized. The massive construct was destroyed, its 58 million organisms eliminated, and every escaped bioship had been hunted down and destroyed. The cost had been severe. The Allied fleet had lost over 200 ships and 40,000 crew members, but the victory was complete. "This is Admiral Carter to all surviving vessels," she broadcast as the fleet regrouped around the debris field that had once been Arcturus Prime. "Today, every species in this galaxy proved that they can learn to hunt when survival is at stake." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of the largest convergence construct ever encountered. "But this is not the end. Our intelligence indicates there are still dozens of smaller constructs throughout the galaxy. Each one is a cancer that must be cut out before it can spread." As the Allied fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, heading for the next reported convergence sighting, Carter delivered her final message of the battle. The galaxy laughed at humanity's warning. "Today the galaxy learned why humans hunt forever. It is not because we enjoy killing. It is because some things are too dangerous to let live." The combined fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a sterile system that served as a monument to the price of survival. The war was far from over, but the galaxy had finally learned to fight it. 1 year after the Battle of Arcturus, Admiral Susan Carter stood in the tactical center of the Allied fleet headquarters, staring at a holographic display that showed the culmination of humanity's greatest fear and greatest hope. The Convergence Prime construct hung in space like a malevolent moon, positioned at the very heart of the galaxy, where the gravitational fields of billions of stars created a natural fortress. Intelligence reports suggested it contained over 100 million individual organisms and the absorbed knowledge of nearly 300 consumed worlds. "Final fleet count, Admiral," reported Commander Ryan Bell. "Human forces, 312 vessels. Allied Council forces, 943. Combined personnel, 3.7 million. Carter nodded, but the numbers felt hollow. In the year since Arcturus, the Allied fleet had destroyed dozens of smaller constructs, but each victory had come at a terrible cost. Humanity had gone from being the galaxy's newest member to its primary defender, and that responsibility was written in the faces of every human officer present. "Enemy strength analysis?" Carter asked. Conservative estimates put Convergence bioship strength at 15,000 vessels, all incorporating technology and tactics absorbed from our previous engagements. Bell replied grimly. "They have learned from every battle, adapted to every tactic we have used." Captain Elena Rodriguez looked up from her intelligence briefing. "Admiral, the construct is not just defending itself. Our long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures consistent with some kind of manufacturing process. It is building something. Building what? Unknown. But the energy patterns suggest something on a scale we have never encountered. If our analysis is correct, they may be preparing to launch a final assault on the galactic core worlds." Carter felt the weight of 3.7 million lives pressing down on her shoulders. Every being in the fleet was here because they had learned the lesson that humanity had tried to teach the galaxy from the beginning. Some threats could only be stopped by force. "Admiral Carter," came the voice of High Counselor Zekmor over the communication system. His massive form appeared on the holographic display, but the arrogant being who had once dismissed humanity's warnings was gone. In his place was a leader who had learned what war truly cost. "Counselor," Carter replied. "Are your ships ready?" "As ready as they can be," Zekmor replied. "Admiral, I want you to know that regardless of what happens here, the Council recognizes that humanity was right from the beginning. We should have listened to your warnings. Save the apologies for after we win," Carter said firmly. "Right now, I need every ship commander to understand that we are not coming back from this battle. This is the last stand of organic life in this galaxy." She activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice carrying to every bridge, every crew station, every being who had chosen to face extinction rather than live as prey. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. For the past year, we have been hunting convergence constructs across the galaxy, learning their tactics, studying their weaknesses, and teaching ourselves to think like predators. Today, we face their final stronghold." The massive prime construct dominated the forward screen, its biomechanical surface writhing with alien life. Swarms of defender ships moved around it in patterns too complex for non-hive minds to follow. I want every crew member to understand what we are fighting for, Carter continued. We are not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. We are fighting for the right of organic life to exist in this universe. Behind us are billions of worlds, trillions of beings, countless species who depend on us to hold the line. On the tactical display, the convergence construct was beginning to show massive activity. The manufacturing process that Rodriguez had detected was reaching some kind of climax. The enemy thinks they understand us because they have consumed our people and absorbed our knowledge. They think they know how we fight, how we think, how we react to overwhelming odds. They are about to learn that they have never faced anything like a galaxy that has learned to hunt. Carter paused, looking around the command center at faces representing dozens of different species, all united by the harsh necessity of survival. Humans warned the galaxy that some threats cannot be negotiated with. Today we prove that some threats cannot survive when the galaxy decides to fight back. The first wave of convergence bioships began moving toward the Allied fleet. Their numbers so vast they seemed to block out the stars. But this time the defenders were ready. All ships implement Protocol Omega, Carter ordered. Today we show the convergence what apex predators look like when an entire galaxy learns to hunt. What followed was less a battle than a controlled apocalypse. The Allied fleet had spent a year learning from every encounter, developing new tactics, new weapons, new ways to think about warfare. But more importantly, they had learned to think like humans. Zephyrian crystal ships no longer tried to preserve their hulls. When swarmed by bioships, they overloaded their energy cores and turned themselves into miniature stars, taking hundreds of enemies with them while their crews escaped in armored pods. Altarian biovessels deployed pathogens that had been engineered not just to disrupt the convergence hive mind, but to turn their own biology against them. Centaurian warships rammed enemy formations with the same ruthless determination that had once horrified their captains. The space around the prime construct became a maelstrom of destruction as two different, evolutionary approaches to survival met in mortal combat. The convergence fought with the single-minded hunger of a force of nature. The Alliance fought with the desperate cunning of cornered predators. Admiral, Bell reported, we are taking heavy casualties, but our kill ratio is better than any previous engagement. The combined fleet tactics are working. Carter watched as her tactical display showed the slow, grinding advance toward the prime construct. Every meter was paid for in blood and metal, but they were making progress. Ma'am, Rodriguez called out urgently. Massive energy spike from the construct. Whatever they were building in there, it is coming online. The surface of the prime construct split open like a flower, revealing something that made even the most hardened veterans step back in shock. It was a weapon the size of a battleship, but its biomechanical design was unlike anything the Convergence had built before. Energy signature analysis complete, reported Dr. Patricia Stone from her science station. Admiral, that thing is not just a weapon. It is some kind of massive hyperspace projector. If they activate it, they could transport the entire construct anywhere in the galaxy instantly, Carter finished. All ships, new priority target. That weapon cannot be allowed to activate. What followed was the most desperate assault in galactic history. Every ship in the Allied fleet turned toward the newly revealed weapon, their crews knowing that failure meant the end of everything they had fought to protect. Human vessels led the charge, their captains implementing the final protocol that Admiral Carter had hoped never to use. The destroyer Retribution accelerated to ramming speed, its captain broadcasting on all frequencies as his ship approached the massive bioweapon. This is Captain Ben Cooper to all Allied forces. Remember us not as the crew that died today, but as the crew that chose to hunt forever. The Retribution struck the bioweapon at maximum velocity, its fusion reactor detonating inside the alien structure. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, and when the light faded, the weapon was gone. But the battle was far from over. Enraged by the destruction of their superweapon, the Convergence threw every remaining bioship at the Allied fleet in a final, desperate assault. All ships, final protocol, Carter broadcast. Everything we have, everything we are. Pour it all into that construct. The combined fleet pressed their attack with the fury of beings who knew there was no tomorrow. Zephyrian ships overloaded their crystal matrices to create energy beams that could slice through bioarmor kilometers thick. Altarian vessels released every engineered pathogen in their arsenals directly into the construct's atmosphere. Human ships did what they had always done, They improvised, adapted, and refused to give up. When the Defiance ran out of ammunition, Carter ordered her crew to ram the construct's primary neural cluster. When that failed to breach the bioarmor, she ordered the ship's entire crew to evacuate while she manually overrode the fusion reactor. "This is Admiral Susan Carter. To all remaining forces," she broadcast from her empty bridge as the reactor entered critical overload. "Humanity came to the stars to find friends among the galaxy's species. Instead, we found a family. Today, we die for that family." The explosion that followed was the largest artificial detonation in galactic history. The prime construct, along with its 100 million organisms and the absorbed knowledge of 300 worlds, was utterly annihilated in a fusion fire that briefly outshone the galactic core. When the light faded and the radiation cleared, the convergence was extinct. Not a single organism survived the final battle. The threat that had consumed entire worlds and terrorized the galaxy was gone forever. But the cost had been everything. The human fleet was destroyed. Earth's colonies were defenseless, and the species that had saved the galaxy was reduced to scattered survivors on distant worlds. In the aftermath, High Counselor Zekmor stood before the empty chambers of the Galactic Council, and 10 years had passed since the Battle of the Galactic Core, and the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Council chambers, once filled with the voices of 47 different species debating the finer points of diplomacy, now served as a memorial to the species that had saved them all. High Counselor Zekmor stood before the empty seat that had once been reserved for humanity's representative. Around him, the surviving council members maintained a minute of silence that had become a daily ritual since the end of the Convergence War. The galaxy had survived, but barely. Entire star systems remained empty, their populations consumed by the convergence before the Allied fleet could reach them. Reconstruction efforts continued on hundreds of worlds, but progress was slow without humanity's technological expertise and relentless work ethic. "Counselors," Zekmor said finally, breaking the silence, "we gather today to commemorate the 10th anniversary of humanity's final sacrifice. But we also gather to address disturbing reports from our outer rim territories." Velthara, her crystalline form now bearing the scars of the war she had survived, activated a holographic display. Long-range sensors have detected several objects in deep space that do not match any known stellar phenomena. The energy signatures are familiar. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. After 10 years of peace, the possibility that the convergence might have survived was the stuff of nightmares. "How is that possible?" asked Simora, her tentacles betraying her nervousness. "We witnessed the complete destruction of the prime construct. Admiral Carter's sacrifice ensured that every organism was eliminated." "That is what we believed," Zekmor replied heavily. "But it appears that some convergence organisms may have escaped the galaxy entirely, fleeing to the void between galaxies. They have had 10 years to grow, to adapt, to evolve." The holographic display showed long-range sensor data from the galaxy's edge. Massive objects, clearly artificial but following no known design principles, were approaching at incredible speed. "Estimated time until they reach our outer territories?" Velthara asked. 18 months, came the reply from a Centaurian sensor technician. Panic began to spread through the chamber. The Allied fleet that had defeated the convergence was gone, sacrificed in the final battle. The shipyards that had built humanity's war machines lay silent. The tactical knowledge that had made victory possible had died with the human admirals who created it. "What forces do we have available?" Zekmor asked, though he already knew the answer would be inadequate. "Combined council fleets number approximately 400 vessels," reported the military coordinator, a scarred Altarian who had survived the Battle of Arcturus. "None of them designed for the kind of warfare the convergence requires." "And human survivors?" "Scattered across the galaxy on isolated colonies. Perhaps 50,000 individuals total, most of them civilian refugees." The numbers were devastating. The species that had saved the galaxy was effectively extinct as a military force, and the convergence was returning stronger than ever. "Counselors," Zekmor said slowly, "it appears we face the same choice that confronted us 10 years ago. We can attempt diplomatic contact with these returning convergence forces, or we can prepare for another war we are not equipped to fight." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. A communications officer rushed into the chamber. her face pale with shock. "High Counselor, we are receiving a transmission from the edge of the galaxy. It is on human military frequencies." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Human military frequencies had been silent for 10 years. There were no human military forces left in the galaxy. "Put it through," Zekmore ordered. The main display activated, showing the interior of what appeared to be a starship bridge, but the design was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was clearly human in origin, but advanced far beyond anything Earth had built during the war. A figure stepped into view, wearing a uniform that bore the insignia of the extinct Earth Defense Force. He was young, perhaps 30 standard years, but his eyes held the weight of someone who had seen too much combat. "Galactic Council, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We are responding to your distress beacon regarding convergence activity in the Outer Rim." Zekmore's massive form shifted with shock. "Admiral Morrison, this is impossible." Humanity was declared extinct following the Battle of the Galactic Core. The human officer smiled grimly. "Extinct, Counselor? You should know better than that. Humans are very hard to kill permanently." The display shifted to show the exterior of Morrison's vessel, and the Council members gasped in amazement. It was enormous, easily twice the size of the largest ships humanity had built during the war. But more shocking was what surrounded it. Hundreds of similar vessels, all bearing human design characteristics but incorporating technology that seemed decades ahead of anything previously known. "How is this possible?" Velthara demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" "When Admiral Carter made her final sacrifice, she did more than destroy the Prime Construct," Morrison explained. "She also transmitted the complete tactical and technological database of the Allied fleet to a secret human colony ship that had been sent to the Andromeda Galaxy years earlier as a precautionary measure." The display showed archival footage of a massive vessel launching from Earth orbit during the early days of the Convergence Crisis. The UES Continuance carried 50,000 humans and the industrial capacity to rebuild our entire civilization. When they received Admiral Carter's final transmission, they knew what they had to do. Morrison's expression hardened. "We spent 10 years in Andromeda, building fleets, developing new weapons, preparing for the day when the convergence would return. Because humans understand something that the rest of the galaxy still has not learned." "What is that?" Zekmore asked quietly. "Predators like the convergence do not give up. They do not stay defeated. They adapt, they evolve, and they come back stronger. The only way to deal with an existential threat is to hunt it until it is completely extinct, not just defeated." The display showed the approaching convergence objects, but now human sensor analysis was overlaid on the images. The enemy force was massive, larger than anything they had faced during the original war. "Estimated convergence strength?" Zekmore asked. 200 million organisms, all incorporating technology and tactics absorbed from our previous encounters. They have spent 10 years in the void between galaxies, growing and preparing for their return." The numbers were staggering. Even with the new human fleet, the odds seemed impossible. "Admiral Morrison," Velthara said, "even with your advanced vessels, you cannot possibly face odds of that magnitude and survive." Morrison smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression that reminded everyone present of Admiral Carter's final broadcast. "Counselor, you still do not understand what humanity truly is. We are not just another species that got lucky during evolution. We are the apex predator of a death world that killed 99% of everything that ever lived on it." He gestured to his crew, and the Council could see beings from dozens of different species working alongside the humans. "During our 10 years in Andromeda, we did not just rebuild our fleet. We rebuilt our philosophy. Every species that joins the Human Expeditionary Fleet learns what it truly means to hunt. They learn that when something threatens your family, your pack, your civilization, you do not negotiate with it. You hunt it until it is extinct," Zekmore said quietly, finally understanding. "Exactly, and the convergence made one critical error in their calculations, which was?" Morrison's smile became genuinely terrifying. "They assumed that humanity died with Admiral Carter at the Galactic Core. They spent 10 years preparing to face the same civilized species that almost defeated them before. They have no idea that humanity spent those same 10 years preparing for them." The display showed the Human Expeditionary Fleet spreading out in a formation that was both familiar and completely alien. It was recognizably human tactical doctrine, but evolved far beyond anything from the original war. All Council forces are ordered to withdraw to minimum safe distance, Morrison commanded. What happens next is going to be educational. As the Council fleets pulled back to observation positions, Morrison activated a galaxy-wide broadcast that would be remembered for the next 1,000 years. Attention Convergence Forces. This is Admiral Jake Morrison, representing the human expeditionary fleet and speaking for every organic species in this galaxy. You were defeated once and driven from our home. You have returned thinking us weak and divided. His voice carried the cold certainty of someone who had never known defeat. You are about to learn why humans are called apex predators. You are about to discover what happens when an entire species dedicates itself to hunting something forever. You wanted to see if our reputation for tenacity was earned or merely boastful. The first Convergence scouts appeared at the edge of the system, their bioships moving in the same swarming patterns that had once terrorized the galaxy. But this time they were met by something they had never encountered before. The human expeditionary fleet did not charge into battle like the desperate,